Morning, everyone. There's an adage that goes something like this. It isn't what you get paid for doing the job, it's what you learn from the job. And of course, all of us right now through this pandemic are learning a great deal with these experiences. But I guess today what I wanted to do was reference more the experiences that I, and I'm sure you, have gained over your years of working, in particular, working at summer jobs, summer employment. I began my summer jobs off the farm working as a laborer for other farmers, and then I worked in the recreation department in my hometown of Portersville Prairie, and went on to referee basketball, umpire baseball, do sports clinics, many other jobs as well. All of them you learn from. One of the more unique jobs I had was as a consequence of me being a child of the Cold War. I had the honor and privilege of working for the Emergency Measures Organization, and our job as a team was to survey major buildings in the province of Manitoba for fallout shelter capacity. So that's how old I am. So we were preparing for a disaster at that time. Now we're in one, and so I look forward to sharing with all of you next week more of our plans for recovery as a consequence of the actions that Manitobans have taken. We're in a position to begin to speculate on where we may go from here. But we must always remember the fundamentals that got us here. And so I say to Manitobans, thank you for adhering to the social distancing and the hand washing and the various practices that will help us help each other and help ourselves. And please continue to do that every day. Once we forget those fundamentals, if we do, we will cause ourselves, most of all, and others, a problem. So follow those practices. Today, knowing I'm talking to helpful people who have been helpful to each other in so many ways over the last number of weeks as we face this pandemic together, I'm asking for your help again. If it wasn't for the summer jobs I had, I couldn't have gone to university. I did not have the resources to do that. The money I earned was important. The skills I gained also important. I would not have been able to graduate with a degree from Brandon University or to become a teacher for a time or to have started a small business or created jobs or to become, to the degree I have in my life, a taxpayer who has been able to give back in other ways besides the taxes to support other people. As a Manitoban, I've always believed in the value of an education, perhaps because of the fact that my mother was a teacher for decades and my sister became one. I believe that we have an obligation to help those who are less fortunate in our province, and to do that, we have an obligation to do our best not to be less fortunate ourselves. The best way to do that is to find out what potential there is within us and then explore discovering it. So speaking of those less fortunate, there are many young people right now in the province of Manitoba who need your help. They need your help to get a job. And so today's announcement is our way as a government of encouraging you to help give young people in our province the experiences that will shape them in their lives and the earnings that will provide them with the greater opportunity to open the door to post-secondary education. Today, I'm proud to announce that we are initiating the largest Manitoba Summer Student Recovery Plan in our province's history. This program will enable Manitobans to hire up to 5 summer students. It will allow them to receive up to $5,000 of matching subsidy on those salaries per student. Notre plan de rétablissement des étudiants d'été du Manitoba permettra aux employeurs d'embaucher jusqu'à 5 étudiants maximum de 5 millions par étudiant, 5 000, avec une égalité de salaire de 55 ans partagée avec l'employeur. Les étudiants seront également admissibles, même s'ils recevront déjà des prestations fédérales. Today's commitment builds on our more than $250 million of direct assistance through our gap protection plan and other programs we've announced previously this week. We already have one of the biggest support programs in Canada in terms of our gap program, and today's announcement demonstrates further our leadership and commitment to our young students with direct financial support to employers. I want to encourage Manitobans to participate in this program. I should emphasize that although this program will initially be geared to supporting our small business community, it is not exclusive to them. And so if Manitobans are interested in employing a young person over the next few months or weeks, I would encourage them to take a serious look at this program. Enrollment and sign up for this program will begin in the next few days. We are excited to encourage Manitobans from any part of the province to take a look at providing an employment opportunity to a young person from Manitoba who needs their support and help. So I'll say again, thank you. Stay positive, encourage one another, help one another. We will be back, and we will be together again. We will beat this thing. Thank you. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. A reminder to our reporters online, you have one preliminary question and one follow-up question. First up this morning from City News, Stephanie.
Mr. Premier, Stephanie Osuk from City News. I know that this is not exclusive to small businesses. What are the criteria for businesses to apply for this?
Well, first of all, we're going to open the program initially, Stephanie, to those businesses who are not in receipt of federal programming. So the gap, the smaller businesses that fall into that gap. And so this will be to complement our previously announced gap funding program. So I guess I'll use an example, if I could, Stephanie. If you and I had a small business that needed some help, and we wanted to hire, say, five students to help us through the summer months, we'd be able to get up to $5,000 each toward a $10,000 salary. So in other words, a 50% subsidy and support of that summer employment that we would create. So what that would mean is that we get the $6,000 from the GAP program plus $25,000 towards our wage subsidy for a total of $31,000. We obviously are not excluding smaller businesses who may just have an opportunity to hire one or two people. That would be wonderful and helpful as well. So we're encouraging broad use of this program.
Thanks. And then reimbursement will be at the end of the employment period in September when students can provide proof that they paid their student wages. What about for employers who can't afford to pay them in the meantime? It sounds like the province won't be getting the funds to them until the end of the summer.
Well, there are, with the GAP program, we're making $6,000 available initially. And of course, that will assist to some degree in helping companies to lever the support that they need if they need additional hiring. But the reality is, for administering the program, we want to make it as simple as possible to administer to get the money out the door to businesses. And so that would mean not having a bunch of pre-requirements. Our pre-requirements are pretty straightforward. If you hire a student and they need a job, then you can hire them, and then you can get 50% of your salary back, up to the $5,000 maximum per student.
From the Winnipeg Free Press, Carol.
Hi, Premier. It's Carol Sanders of the Free Press. I'm wondering about the plan for reopening the House. When will the legislature here reconvene? We're hearing about other legislatures planning to start resuming in the coming weeks. What's the plan for Manitoba?
Well, the plan will be determined in consultation with the other parties, Carol, so those discussions are underway, I'm told, between House leaders.
Okay, and a follow-up, what's the latest update you can share on your meetings with the Deputy Prime Minister and the proposal for work sharing, the EI plan for non-essential government workers?
Sure, I had a good discussion with Deputy Prime Minister Freeland a couple of days ago. I'll have a discussion with the Prime Minister later today. The Premiers have backed our support for a couple of different proposals. We're going to be raising those on the call. I'll mention again the wage subsidy program, which we thank the federal government for announcing. They announced it almost a month ago. It hasn't kicked off yet, so our concern is that we get that plane to land so that we can have our small businesses able to apply who qualify for the federal program. In the meantime, our program, just announced a couple of days ago, will land next week. These two programs can complement one another. As far as the other issues, the Deputy Prime Minister has assured me that everything's on the table and under discussion. In the meantime, we'll await a response from the federal government, but we're understanding that they are dealing with a numerous number of issues, as are we.
From Global, Brittany.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Brittany from Global here. The weather is getting nicer. We are starting to see more and more small gatherings popping up around the city and the province from people that are sending us in photos. You did legislate some stuff the other week so that enforcement officers could go out and start ticketing people. Are we seeing any tickets besides the 3 that were issued in the PA, and when are we going to start seeing some actual enforcement instead of warnings?
Well, warnings are enforcement, Brittany, but I understand the concern. I think we all share it, that people not get loosey-goosey around these rules, because what's got us where we are as one of the leading provinces in reducing cases and flattening the curve is what's going to keep us there. So I emphasize to Manitobans exactly that point. Stay on target with the fundamentals. So I've asked for a report to be prepared on additional inspection and oversight to see what we can do to step up enforcement. I do thank, though, those who are following these recommendations, and that is, again, I would emphasize the vast majority of Manitobans. And as we move forward, I say to all Manitobans, if you want to stay in the lead at protecting each other, you follow these fundamentals. All of us, not some of us, all of us, and not some of the time, all of the time.
Do you have any updated numbers on warnings and tickets that you can provide to show what is being done and how many enforcement officers are actually out there doing this work?
I don't have it right here with me, Brittany. I did get an update on Monday on the activities of the past weekend. I understand that there was a significant number of people out doing the work of oversight, and also a number of warning tickets were handed out, and a lot of informational material. I think sometimes there's a danger that we forget how important it is to repeat these instructions again and again and again. Those of you who are in the news media are in the center of information, and you get it, but a lot of people are out there in the countryside and around the city who may not. And so getting that information out, the educational approach we've taken is working, not perfectly, but it is working, and we need to continue to get the information out, and I agree, we need to have continued efforts at enforcement, whether warnings or actual ticketing, if necessary. I hope it isn't, but the fact of the matter is the deterrent is sadly necessary for some of our citizens.
From the Brandon Sun, Drew.
Thank you. This is Drew May from the Brandon Sun. Mr. Premier, does the province have any sense of what kind of industries might most benefit from this summer student job program that you're announcing today?
It's a great question, Drew. It calls for a lot of speculation. I can only tell you that I'm just one Manitoban, but my experience with summer work ranged from employment with the Department of Agriculture one summer to demolishing old buildings another summer to you know, as I said, the sports jobs that I had a couple of summers. It's a wide range. I think that the key point here is our program's designed to help young people who want to work. It provides an incentive for them to work. And I would say to young people who are watching this, whether you are attracted by a federal program right now or not, the federal programs are designed in large part to pay you not to work. And I would say to you, at the end of the summer, you'll be better off if you work. You'll be better off to find a job, and you'll learn more from it, and it'll look way better on a resume than when you have to put that during the pandemic you took a subsidy. So apply for a job, find a partner, work hard to find somebody who will give you a chance to work this summer, whatever the job may be. That's better than sitting around not doing any work.
And just to follow up, but speaking of some of your concerns about the federal program, have you expressed those concerns to the federal government in your calls with them?
Well, I don't know the specific reference you're making to which specific program, but absolutely the exchanges with the federal government between myself and the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and all premiers have been very frank, very forthright, and I would hope productive and cooperative. We understand that this is an unprecedented time and it's challenging, and so any comments I've made, I would hope, would not be misinterpreted as critical of the federal government. Rather, we've made constructive suggestions that we think have led to improvements in their programs. For example, on the wage subsidy program, when the federal government first introduced it, it had a maximum support of 10%. And I and other premiers raised the concern that that would not work and would not be helpful, and the federal government listened to that, and they changed that program. Good for them. Now we've got to get the plane to land. We've got to get that money out of that program and into the hands of the small businesses that need that support.
From CJOB, Diana.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. Diana from 680 CJOB. The federal government obviously also has their own summer jobs program targeting students, particularly in post-secondary. How does this program differ from Ottawa's? Do you apply for one or another? Are they kind of complementary? And are there taxes or clawbacks if a business were to kind of qualify for both and use both?
Well, we're trying to not compete with the federal government, but to complement what they're doing. And so they announced their program earlier this week, but there are a number of details to be ironed out, which is understandable. Again, I would say they've framed the announcement in such a way that it sounds good, and I'm hopeful that it's a good program. We're trying to fill the gaps in Manitoba for our young people. If they can't find work, if they can't find support from the federal government with their program, they can certainly apply to ours. I'd encourage them actually to look for work here from Manitoba small businesses. I'm hearing from the Chambers of Commerce and the Business and Trade Associations that there are a number of companies who are looking for help right now. And so I believe that the job opportunities are out there. Our program's designed to incent young people and to incent employers, of course, to create jobs for young people, not to pay people not to work, but rather to encourage them and to help pay them to work.
And as a follow-up, how are those talks going with union leaders on a sort of reduced work week? And when might we see some answers on what's going to happen to that end, or if there will be layoffs? What's that timeline looking like for you?
Sure. Well, as I've said repeatedly, the exercise we've embarked upon was to look for waste or for resource savings that are not needed right now, because as we all know, there are that potential for savings as a consequence of the pandemic, and to redirect that savings to our frontline workers and to the job they're doing, because that's where the resources are needed right now. Hundreds of millions of dollars are needed there. So I can only say the preliminary discussions that the Treasury Board has had have been, I believe, very productive and fruitful. I know that a number of the departments, I've been told, have stepped up with ideas, have come forward with suggestions, and more of those details I expect to be finalized next week. But I say thank you to everybody for stepping up and doing their part. When you ask for help, sometimes people step up and sometimes they don't. I understand that. But I've been really impressed with the way that people have stepped up throughout government. The idea here is remembering that we need the resources on the front line, and that the way to get them is through an intelligent strategy that utilizes resources not needed right now and directs them to where they are needed. And that's exactly what we should be doing here, what's going on right across the country and basically at every jurisdiction.
From the Winnipeg Sun, Scott.
Scott Billick, Winnipeg Sun. Question, obviously, for the Premier. How are businesses who are shuttered right now and are unsure when they'll even be able to open up again able to apply for this program when they don't even know if they'll be open for the summer?
Well, clearly, Scott, the reality for some businesses is they may not be able to resume the kind of business in the way that they ran it before, while there is social distancing and other measures in place. We understand that. But what businesses are telling us is they want to get ready to resume doing some kind of business. It may be different from what it was before, but in many cases, they'd benefit by having some help. And so our incentive program is designed to help those businesses who want to get back up and running, get ready. And to be quite frank, in some of the cases that have been reported to us by chambers of commerce and some of the trade associations, some businesses have lost their employees because they have gone and taken the $2,000 a month federal program. And so they are being paid now not to be available to small businesses. So our program is designed to assist for this summer to help create jobs for young people and to assist those small businesses that want to get ready and want to get back up and running as we are able to reduce the restrictions that are currently in place to protect all of us.
And my follow-up is just hearing out of the U of M today, University of Manitoba, that is, that I guess they offered to pay instead of coming up with a plan to pay cuts and stuff like that. They offered to use the rainy day fund to pay, and that was turned down by government. Do you have a comment on that?
No.
From CBC Radio Canada, Patrick.
Bonjour, Monsieur Pallister. Patrick Foucault from Radio Canada. We have a lot of international students right in Manitoba, some in our French community, and they might be wondering if they will be able to benefit from that program you announced today. So will they be able to benefit from the wage subsidies you announced? And would it work differently for them?
Patrick, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll get back to you later in the next half hour. I honestly don't know on the design of the plan whether it was designed just for Manitoba residents or not. So I'll find out. We'll get back to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And an unrelated topic, do you have a specific day next week on which you'll introduce your plan to ease the restrictions and reopen the economy? Do you know if it's early in the week, later in the week? Can you give us a little hint on that?
That is correct. It will be either earlier in the week or later in the week or in the middle of the week, one of those.
From CBC Manitoba, Bart.
Premier Bart Pallister here at CBC. What is the province doing to ensure that potato producers, commercial fishers, cattle farmers, pork producers all can retain their capacity to reduce food right now when their markets have been heavily impacted?
Yeah, I mean, this is a monumental issue for a province with a big piece of our pie chart of GDP, Bartley, as you know, associated with ag. And whether it's ag or related processing industries, this is an important industry for us. I've discussed this with Chrystia Freeland with specific reference to a couple of the examples you just cited to ascertain what the feds have in mind here. And we're going to have that, I'll be raising this again on the call with the Prime Minister, because it isn't just Manitoba, obviously, that's impacted here, though we have a significant number of very, very key ag industries. So it's in discussion with the federal government. I wish I could tell you more in terms of specific programming. I can't at this point, Bartley.
Thank you for that answer. As a follow-up on an unrelated topic, can you confirm today that layoff notices verbally have been provided to temporary provincial employees over the past 2 days?
I can't confirm that, Bartley. I'm sorry. I can only tell you that we were very impressed with the magnitude and the creativity of the responses. Again, it's been widely misrepresented that these proposals are all about cuts. They're not. They're about allocating resources that are not necessary right now in certain aspects of Crown or government agencies. Every department's come up with a plan. Every Crown corporation has come up with a plan to find savings that can be put to use towards supporting our frontline pandemic response, chiefly in healthcare, not exclusively. The responses have been varied. They're being evaluated, and I hope that we'll be able to share with you next week what the conclusive steps are that will be taken as a result of all this work. But I would just say this. The ideas that people throughout our public sector have come up with here as a result of this exercise are not only critical to finding resources for the front line today, they're also critical for improving the public service going out beyond this pandemic. For example, We've had a number of really thoughtful suggestions, and we're going to embark on more work on this, on how to facilitate people being able to work from home, as opposed to having to come into a government office necessarily. Just because we did that in the last number of decades doesn't mean that's the way we have to go forward. And so we're getting really positive suggestions and ideas coming from academia, from our Crown Corps, from each of our government departments. This was and remains the principal purpose of this exercise. And yes, of course, we're after savings to help our frontline people, absolutely. But the intention is not to try to rework the entire civil service because of a pandemic. It's to come out of this pandemic better prepared to serve the people of Manitoba. That's what the public service has been congregating around, and that's why I'm optimistic about the ideas they've been bringing forward.
From the Canadian Press, Steve.
Steve Lambert from the Canadian Press, Premier. In the last few days, your cabinet has passed regulations to authorize the use of conservation officers to join the effort to enforce public health orders. I'm wondering why the government is not using or offering some of the public sector workers who are facing layoffs to take on such tasks, this growing area of either public health enforcement, public health education, or even things like the food distribution program that the government has now put out for an RFP.
Well, we actually are doing exactly that, Steve. I don't have my list right in front of me now, but I can only tell you that hundreds of civil servants have been redeployed to different roles, and that, of course, that redeployment is being utilized right now in terms of responding to this pandemic.
Okay, and follow-up question, will you be talking to universities in the next day or two? And what might you have to say to them to address the concerns that the cuts that you're seeking will impact education and training and preparing people for the economy?
Well, the announcement I'm making today is very germane to post-secondary, obviously. I would say the continued commitment of our government versus, if you want to do cross-comparatives for the last 5 years across the country, our commitment to post-secondary funding exceeds that of many, many provinces across the country. We continue to support our post-secondary institutions in every possible way, and today this program will help support our post-secondary institutions as well. We've quintupled our support for scholarships in this province in just the last 4 years, and a big part of that is going to assist in encouraging people to enroll in Red River, U of M, Brandon University, you name it, University College of the North and the like. So we continue to partner, I think, very effectively and cooperatively with the leadership and the administration of our universities and post-secondary institutions.
From CTV Winnipeg, Charles.
Mr. Premier, Charles Lefebvre, CTV Winnipeg. My question is about the plans that you said are coming next week to look at eventually easing public health orders and looking at reopening. Saskatchewan obviously announced their plan, plan yesterday, and I'm just wondering how close will Manitoba be examining Saskatchewan's plan for reopening their province, and what lessons will be applied to that?
Well, very closely. I've read the plan and reread the plan, as our senior staff have, and we think there are some very good ideas in there. Saskatchewan and Manitoba are closely aligned in many ways, and so we'll take, we'll certainly take their plan into consideration, as we have in cooperating with Saskatchewan on numerous other fronts. I wanted to go back, if I could, to an earlier question I was asked about international students, and just to give clarity to that one, I've just been told international students will be eligible for this program. So I want to be clear, international students will be eligible for this program.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. My follow-up, just what sort of, just specifically, can you talk about specifically what sort of parts for the for Saskatchewan for reopening would you be implementing in there?
Well, I'll tell you when our plan comes out, but clearly there are a number of parallel concepts that have to be borne in mind. The most important is public safety first. And so as Premier Moe has outlined, and I spoke with Premier Moe yesterday on this very issue, we are both, obviously, as I think all Canadians are, concerned that we do what is right to make sure there is not a rebound in the ascension of the number of cases in our country or provinces. And so this is why hammering away at the fundamentals, as I do, and as Dr. Rusin does, and as Ms. Siragusa does as well, and all of us, I hope, are repeating this to those who need to hear it. Maintaining adherence to those fundamentals is what got us into the position in Manitoba, and to a good degree in Saskatchewan as well, where we're able to start talking about loosening restrictions. So we need to keep doing that. I want to close by just saying thank you to everyone. Enjoy the weekend with social distancing always in your minds, and make sure to appreciate and thank our frontline workers at every opportunity for the tremendous job they're doing. On that theme, I just wanted to say a special thank you to our procurement team. They're doing a very, very difficult job, and look, it's a global concern getting protective equipment and so on. But I just wanted to share with Manitobans a special thank you to our procurement team in this specific instance. We were able to obtain some significant number, and these are hard to find apparently, of monitors of a certain type. The fact of the matter is, the supplier said to us, we can fulfill your order, but Ontario and Quebec have an extreme shortage right now. And our procurement people, in consultation with our government ministers, made the decision to send basically 100 monitors out of 120 over to Quebec and Ontario to assist them. We're buying them. We're helping Ontario and Quebec. It's not tens of millions of dollars, and I don't want Manitobans thinking we're giving away something that we need today, because our monitor situation's good. We are secure for a good time into the future, but Ontario isn't, and Quebec isn't. I thought Manitobans deserve to know that and to feel proud of our frontline workers for doing the job they're doing. And here's an example, another example of how Manitoba steps up when people need our help. Keep stepping up. We'll beat this thing together.